Hello and welcome my friends to another Saturday morning arcade. I am Savino as always, and today we will keep exploring the year of 1988 and checking the games that came after Technos basically invented the genre. 1988 was an interesting year since the genre wasn't well established yet. Developers were trying to find new elements that could add to the gameplay, as we saw with POW and the use of firearms. Developed by Sega, Dynamite Ducks arrived in the arcades in May 1988. Actually, this game was developed by Yu Suzuki, the head behind Sega AM2 and the guy behind a bunch of awesome games like Super Hang-On, Afterburner 2 and obviously Shenmue. Dynamite Ducks was the first attempt by the team to create a beat 'em up, and while later AM2 would specialize in racing and fighting games, they would try it again in about 4 years. When it comes to the game itself, Dynamite Ducks is a pretty interesting one. While far from a great beat 'em up, there are elements here that were unique for the time, which, between us here, wasn't that hard to come up with. The story is again pretty basic. You play as Spin and Bean, two ducks that are Lucy's pet, a girl whom we learned nothing about in the game. One day while playing with her pets, the evil Achacha the Great appears near them, drops a bubble from his mouth and captures Lucy. After seeing that, the two ducks go through a door and the adventure starts. The story is more than anything that came before, just a touch to give the players some context. While in POW you were a prisoner of war trying to escape from your captors, or in Double Dragon you were trying to save your girlfriend from a gang leader, here you have no idea who Achacha is or what his evil deeds are. This is not something that will detract from the game. It's a simple story and it works pretty well for what the game tried to be. And the story is not intrusive since you get only a small cutscene at the beginning of the game and one at the end. Visually, Dynamite Ducks was a great improvement over what came before. The game has fairly big sprites, the visuals are extremely colorful, and the enemies are a wacky bunch like you've never seen before. You will face weird dog heads, sumo pig fighters, boxing alligators, there are a ton of weird and creative enemies for you to face here. The animations are pretty simple, even for the time, with only a couple of frames for every move you make, but they don't look bad or anything. The enemies are actually pretty fun to watch because they make the most varied faces when attacking or being defeated. You can even notice how your character seems to lose interest in the world around him when he is about to die. It's primitive, that's for sure, but in some ways it was a lot more than what arcades were doing back then. There are also some nice backgrounds here, and while you won't get expensive vistas like some backgrounds from Double Dragon or POW, you will get the first parallax effect in a beat 'em up ever. Okay, it's only in one level, but even so it looks pretty nice for a first time. Actually, Dynamite Ducks is a first in many things, like this huge ad for Kentucky Fried Chicken, a US fast food chain, right on the game's first screen. I never understood this ad because Dynamite Ducks was never released in the US, only Japan and Europe. Yes, KFC was present in Europe at the time, but there were more famous chains operating in the region, I am sure. It's possible the game was set to release in the US at some point. After doing some research, I learned the game was available in Canada, so something must have happened when licensing the game for the US. When it comes to the sound, Dynamite Ducks is surprisingly good. Well, at least the OST is. The sound effects are nice and there are even some creative sounds like the quacks of your duck, but overall these are just the bleeps and bloops you got in every arcade from the same era. But the OST is pretty damn good. It has a cartoon feel as expected, but the compositions are very good and surprisingly pleasant to listen to. It's not really a surprise when you learn that the composer is none other than Hiroshi Kawaguchi, the same guy behind the OST of games like Hang-On, Afterburner and Outrun. Seriously, Sega had the best composers, it wasn't even fair. Despite having a great team behind it, Dynamite Ducks did little to improve what was already available in the market, and in some sense it even regressed a bit. The gameplay is what had already become the standard at the time. You walk right, beat some bad guys until you reach the boss, but here Sega took some questionable decisions that halt the game from being at least as good as what came previously. Unlike Double Dragon or POW, in Dynamite Ducks you don't get trapped inside an arena when the enemies spawn. Here things work more like a run and gun, with the screen scrolling as you walk and enemies coming in waves after waves that you can simply pass through and ignore most of the time. And despite being classified as a beat'em up, the game feels way more like a run and gun than a brawler. Most of your enemies use projectiles to attack, and the ones who don't will often come in at your direction like a kamikaze, ready to crash against you without mercy. You will also find a ton of weapons to use against them, from pebbles to guided rockets. There are a lot of cool weapons to use here, and they have a bunch of ammo. Some of these weapons will be essential against some of the bosses, and you are basically screwed if you face them bare hands because your attacks are simply useless. Your attack is nothing more than a single punch that you can and should spam while you're walking around the levels. You also have a charged attack, the first in a beat'em up, that prevents you from walking when charging it. There's an aerial attack here too, but honestly, your jump is more useful as an escape mechanism than anything else. The controls are tight, responsive, and the hitbox are pretty good too, but that's really not enough when most of your enemies will attack from afar or come at you faster than you can react. More than that, Dynamite Ducks was also the first beat'em up to present a directional combat, which means that enemies will attack you from any direction you can think of, and without being able to run or dodge, the onslaught of enemies attacking you at the same time is a bit too much. And trust me, there are a lot of enemies walking around the levels. It's honestly impressive seeing that many enemies jumping around and shooting projectiles at you without a single frame drop. After seeing the slowdowns in Double Dragon and POW to a lesser degree, it's refreshing to see something like that. To make things a little bit fairer, Dynamite Ducks was the first to introduce food items to replenish your health mid-game. You can find them lying around on the floor or dropping from enemies, and while they don't replenish nearly enough of what you'd need, at least they are here, and soon they would become a standard in the genre. Another thing impressive here is the huge bosses. Some of them were amazing for 1988, with lots of moving and breakable parts that we have never seen before. The game is also the first to have proper mid-level bosses. One could argue that Double Dragon did it first, but I never see a Bobo as a mid-level boss or anything, just a harder enemy to beat. Here, Sega left no room for doubt when you're facing a boss. Dynamite Ducks was an interesting experiment, but it was far from a good game. The gameplay was pretty repetitive, the game was incredibly hard, and after you played it once, there was nothing really interesting here to make you go back again. Well, maybe the soundtrack, but no one went to the arcade just to listen to the music, and I mean, you know how impossible it was. While the game wasn't great, there were a lot of great ideas that soon would start to appear in basically every beat'em up ever. In less than a year, Sega would shake the arcades with a true and proper beat'em up, but for now it was lagging far behind Tecno's SNK and, as we will soon see, Tecmo. Dynamite Ducks was later ported to the Sega Master System, Amiga, Commodore 64, among other computers. It's a bit strange that this game was never ported to the Mega Drive together with other games that used the System 16 board. Dynamite Ducks is another game that, if you wanna play the arcade version, your best bet is emulating it, since the game was never ported to anything. And that's it for the video. Thank you for watching, and if you watched until here, why not leave a like and subscribe to the channel to have more beat'em up things in your life. I will be back next week with an interesting list of SNES beat'em up, but until then, I hope you all have an awesome week, and remember, keep arcades alive.